4 independent sources are confirming to NBC 10's Deanna Durante, our Montgomery County Bureau reporter, that the escaped inmate has been caught. This has been a very difficult search. Let's go to Deanna now, live on the phone. Deanna, walk us through this, because law enforcement has been trying to catch up with him for 2 weeks.
We're still getting details as to exactly how this happened. Early this morning, we learned that they had tightened the perimeter around where they believed that he was, that overnight some information was developed from air investigative sources, whether it was planes or drones, but they were able to see some movement, I'm told by sources, in a very specific area of that perimeter. We learned the perimeter yesterday was about 2 miles, north and south, 5 miles wide, so a very large area there near French Creek State Park with a lot of tree cover. So trying to find some sort of movement there has been tricky, not just there, but in the other perimeter as well in southern Chester County. We've been told that about 8:20 this morning he was captured and he is alive. He is in custody. I am awaiting more details. I can tell you early this morning there was a SWAT team shift change, and they tightened that perimeter up with more members of the region SWAT team, some fresh team members that came in. Most of these men and women have been working 20-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, staying there, trying to make sure that they find him out in the heat. And so apparently maybe last night, with the way that the weather changed, some of that heat technology was able to pick up on Danilo Cavalcante, who they believe was on the ground. It sounds like he was taken into custody without incident. Keep in mind, he had been picking up things along the way here since his escape.
Randy, you have spent at least a week on this perimeter, watching police go in and out, watching police try to close in on Cavalcante. What's it like there right now? We saw the one agent in the background of your shot give the thumbs up.
Yeah, and this has become a bit of a gathering place here at the intersection of Route 100, just near the high school that was closed down. People coming out, just watching the law enforcement parade that is leaving the site of the capture. People are clapping, waving. It is a happy moment here in South Coventry Township. I've actually got Tom Peacock. He's one of the folks who lives near the search perimeter. Tom, you were here yesterday. It was pretty tense. Describe what it was like today when you got word, and how did you find out?
I think a guy over next to me got a text message first, alert. Yesterday, kind of moments of excitement with cars starting to speed by and this, and then nothing going on, and then announcements via Facebook Lives and all that. We got him here, and then to actually see it confirmed this morning was, a lot of naysayers about our state police in the past couple of days, and it's nice to see that we kicked him in the teeth and he's back in the cell.
What you're looking at is the caravan, the vehicle where Danilo Cavalcante is right now, pulling into the barracks as we speak. This is the parking lot.
A law enforcement official confirmed to the Associated Press in reporting that officials used thermal imaging, new information now from an aircraft, to pinpoint a possible location on the ground. We're going to keep it on this, and we're going to commentate this. There he is, shirtless, walking out, surrounded by officers. Doesn't appear that he's injured at all. Walking under his own power, of course.
His face
handcuffs.
might have been a little. Yeah,
handcuffs behind his back. Walked right into the state police barrack. After 14 days, there's the culminating moment for these law enforcement officers working 12 hours on, 12 hours off, in hot weather, in stormy weather, and just being vigilant and resilient for the sake of the public. Nobody was hurt, and it appeared there even a peaceful arrest of Cavalcante, all things considered, that he was armed with a .22 caliber rifle
and
at
you
the
had
time.
5 SWAT officers riding in the back with him. And as you suspected, we were waiting. That news conference was supposed to begin at 9:30. It appears that they're getting into place now. They were waiting. I believe you were correct there, Keith. They were waiting until they got Danilo Cavalcante into the police barracks in Avondale, and we just saw that moments ago here on NBC 10. 5 officers riding in the back with him walked
Behind me here in this grassy area near the wood line, as well as in these large logs behind this tractor company, is where much of this capture actually went down, just off Route 100. To give you some context, that's the far eastern edge of the perimeter they set up. I want to zoom in here and show you the location. You can see this is the kind of terrain that they have been talking about for 2 weeks now. Really dense wooded area. You see that brush. And then if you look over to the left here, John, we'll pan over, you can see these logs. We're told in part of this capture he was trying to get under these logs as well to try to make his escape before police were able to move in with those tactical units. And of course, that canine dog you heard so much about just there that helped in this capture. We also spoke with the manager of this John Deere tractor supply company. He and his employees watching as this whole thing went down. Take a listen.
So we were watching from the loading dock, and we basically just saw them storming checking the tree lines, checking the stream, and out of nowhere, everybody started to congregate back by the shed, and here they were already bringing him out. And then we watched him basically walk him up. One camouflage trooper had his gun, his rifle, and then they were walking him up, and they basically, EMS's kind of worked on him in the parking lot, and they loaded him up.
Back here live, more of that dense wooded area just off Route 100. Speaking with the manager of this company, he also told me that his employees, had obviously known about this situation for days with a containment zone and having to be extra precautious. But they said overnight there was a property behind this tree line where around 2:30 this morning there was some sort of either sighting or 911 call placed, as well as the discovery of a backpack. So they had an idea, especially when those troopers started flooding this area right around 8 o'clock this morning. Just before that, that's when he realized this was going down, this was real. And then, of course, they just watched from right there. That is the loading dock, if we can zoom over and show you, where they watched this entire capture take place. And then he was put into that armored vehicle and then driven south to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks in Avondale, where Cavalcante is now being interviewed according to PSP, and then eventually transferred to a more secure state facility.
NBC 10 News starts now.
Our nightmare is finally over and the good guys won.
He scaled the walls of prison to get out, triggering a 14-day manhunt that spanned 3 counties.
I don't know how I can get away with all this with all the police officers working round the clock to try to get this guy.
And after evading authorities for 2 weeks,
shortly after 8 a.m., our suspect was captured. He was apprehended this morning with no shots fired.
Danilo Cavalcante is now in police custody and headed to a state correctional institution.
We had a job to do, and that was to capture Cavalcante.
The escape, the manhunt, and now the capture. Tonight we have new information about how the 14-day manhunt ended. I'm Johnny Archer.
And I'm Jacqueline London. We begin with Danilo Cavalcante's mugshot, taken just a short time ago after his return to prison. Here's how the capture happened. It all started after midnight when a burglary alarm sounded. Then around 1 a.m., a DEA plane spotted a heat source, and teams on the ground began to track it. By 8 o'clock this morning, teams had surrounded Danilo Cavalcante and took him into custody shortly after.
And here is a look at the Border Patrol search dog that helped make the arrest. His name is Yoda, and we just got this photo minutes ago, and you can see the dog next to the suspect. Now, we have covered this story extensively for 2 weeks. Tonight, we have live team coverage of Cavalcante's capture. We start our team coverage at 5 with NBC 10's Brian Sheehan live in Kennett Square. Brian.
Yeah, Johnny and Jackie, this Chester County community is breathing a collective sigh of relief tonight. Many residents actually came here to the firehouse earlier today to hear the news for themselves when authorities announced it during a press conference. Many tell us they finally feel at ease knowing that Danilo Cavalcante can no longer terrorize their lives.
Shortly after 8 a.m., our suspect was captured.
Those are the words so many have been anxiously waiting to hear ever since Danilo Cavalcante escaped the Chester County prison 14 days ago.
Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief.
This image shows the 34-year-old convicted killer wearing a stolen Eagle sweatshirt after members of law enforcement finally zeroed in on him around 8 this morning after making significant progress hours earlier.
Last night, shortly after midnight, a series of events started to unfold.
Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens says a home's burglar alarm went off in the area of Prizer Road near Route 100. Tactical teams started gathering on the ground while an aircraft with thermal heat technology scanned from above.
Close to 1 a.m., picked up a heat signal that they began to track. It was west of PA 100 and north of Prizer Road.
But when severe weather moved in, the aircraft was forced to land, so the tactical teams secured the area until the plane could fly. And by rush hour, it was back in the air and detecting a heat source once again.
Shortly after 8 a.m., tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise. Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred.
But Cavalcante didn't give up. Bivens says he started crawling through heavy brush while clutching the rifle he stole earlier in the week in an attempt to get away, but was apprehended by a canine officer.
The dog subdued him, and team members from both of those teams immediately moved in. He continued to resist, but was forcibly taken into custody. No one was injured as a result of that.
After 14 days of terror, finally an ending for this rural Chester County community that can now return to life as normal. Now, Cavalcante was taken to the state police barracks in Avondale where he was processed and questioned. It's unclear if he did cooperate with investigators. Now, a short time ago, he was taken to SCI Phoenix where authorities say he will begin serving the remainder of his life sentence. Live in Kennett Square, Chester County this afternoon, I'm Brian Sheehan, NBC 10 News.
2 weeks of uncertainty now over. Brian, thank you.
And during his 2 weeks on the run, Danilo Cavalcante crisscrossed different parts of Chester County from the prison in Pocopson Township to Longwood Gardens. Then after stealing a van, he drove up to Phoenixville. Finally, he ended up in the South Coventry Township area where he stole a rifle. And this morning, police detected a heat source and closed in on the escaped killer. The capture took place behind
This is NBC 10 News.
Caught. The 14-day manhunt for the convicted killer is finally over. Danilo Cavalcante is back in prison.
Shortly after 8 a.m., our suspect was captured.
Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief.
The 2-week manhunt centered in Chester County, but a convicted killer on the run spread fear in other communities around the region.
NBC 10's Rosemary Connors talked to neighbors a short time after the arrest. She joins us live from South Coventry Township near the woods where Cavalcante was captured. Rosemary.
Yeah, Jackie and Johnny, it happened in this thick brush just behind me. And throughout the day, we have seen people come down here. They wanted to get a firsthand look at this area where the arrest happened for themselves. It has been a tense 2 weeks, certainly in Chester County and beyond. And for the people here in South Coventry Township tonight, they will finally be able to rest easy.
I feel so relieved and happy. And I went around, and every trooper that I saw, I thanked them from the bottom of my heart.
Captured in Chester County after 2 weeks on the run, convicted killer Danilo Cavalcante met the long arm of the law Wednesday morning. Pennsylvania State Police say aircraft detected a heat source in the woods of South Coventry Township overnight that ultimately led them to Cavalcante.
They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise. Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred.
Cavalcante, you believe, was?
He was down in this area.
Okay.
On the creek.
Nearby residents like Linda Rafe-Snyder have been awake since early this morning after state police say a neighbor's alarm went off and the SWAT team descended on the area.
There were 3 officers that came in and they wanted to search the house. So
5 o'clock this morning.
5 o'clock this morning. The officer that was at the door this morning said that they had seen him in our yard.
When law enforcement told you, we've seen Cavalcante in your yard, what goes through your mind?
Fear, nervousness. I mean, it's like really happening.
Doug Brewer, who owns a landscaping and tree services business just yards away from where a canine helped authorities nab Cavalcante, was here when he emerged from the woods.
Kind of looked defeated, really.
Law enforcement had swarmed him.
Yeah. I think he got bound up in the brush back there and he couldn't get out.
Describe for me what that's been like the past few days to be on lockdown with your family.
I think it was more difficult on my wife because she just felt the stress a lot more than I did.
Robert Russell, a father of 4 who lives in the search area, explains someone, either state police or perhaps Cavalcante, got into his barn this week.
The barn door had been opened a couple of times on and off, and so we had called in the tip line and just said, hey, our barn door doesn't swing open.
You can see the pond through here. I do.
As for Linda Rafe-Snyder, this morning she knew state police would get the job done.
The helicopter just kept circling and circling and circling, so I felt that they were on to something.
It was close. It was imminent.
Yes.
And just as residents like Linda Rafe-Snyder there have been thanking state police for their efforts, in turn, state police, they've been thanking residents, small businesses for their support over these past 2 weeks as they have hunkered down in these neighborhoods to bring Cavalcante to justice. Reporting live in South Coventry Township, I'm Rosemary Connors, NBC 10 News.
Just so nerve-wracking for so many families, but now it is finally over. Rosemary, thank you.
An entire region just paralyzed with this. Longwood Gardens says it is now looking forward to returning to normal after this long ordeal. It reopened today at 10 o'clock. On its Facebook page, the Botanical Gardens thanked law enforcement, authorities, and government officials for their work in apprehending Danilo Cavalcante. Shortly after Cavalcante was taken into custody, law enforcement involved in the operation gathered around him and posed for a photo.
And that has raised some questions. NBC 10's Lauren Make is looking into this part of the story today. And Lauren, the state police lieutenant colonel running this operation was asked about that today.
Johnny, he was. And before we get to his response, let's show you what we're talking about. In the photo, you can see Cavalcante in the center, surrounded by about 30 law enforcement officers, some kneeling on the ground. A canine is also part of the photo here. Now, it has been posted by a former U.S. House member and shared significantly on social media. Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens was asked about what was referred to as a photo op. Here's his response.
You know, I'm aware that there was a photo op that was taken out there. Those men and women worked amazingly hard through some very trying circumstances. They're proud of their work. I'm not bothered at all by the fact that they took a photograph with him in custody. Again, they're proud of their work. They kept the community safe. I say thanks to them and good job.
Now, the U.S. Marshals Service does have a policy against employees posing prisoners for photos unless it's necessary for identification purposes. It is unclear whether any marshals were part of that photo. I did reach out to the U.S. Marshals Service to ask about that, but have not yet heard back. I'm Lauren Make, NBC 10 News.
We'll wait to hear what they say. Lauren, thank you. The guard on watch at the prison tower the day Cavalcante escaped was fired. The escape went unnoticed until the guards did a head count more than an hour after the escape.
Cavalcante was in prison to start serving a life sentence for killing his ex-girlfriend. Her family released a statement this afternoon saying, quote, "Right now my family and I need to regroup and focus on processing everything that has happened while taking care of ourselves. The last 2 weeks have been extremely painful and terrifying as they have brought back all the feelings of losing my sister and the idea that the perpetrator could hurt us again. Therefore, I kindly ask that our privacy be respected so that we can collect ourselves and figure out how to overcome this tragic experience." And we have extensive coverage of Danilo Cavalcante on the NBC 10 app that includes a full timeline of his escape and capture, interviews with witnesses and law enforcement, and the full video of this morning's news conference. You can find all of that and more right now on NBC10.com.
Hunt and capture. Tim Furlong is talking with neighbors who are relieved tonight. Let's start, though, with Deanna Durante, who is live in Avondale. Deanna, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, this is the place where they took Danilo Cavalcante earlier today. He spent about 4 hours inside the police barracks here. We know that he was arraigned via video, so he appeared before a judge. There was a translator here to help him. We know that police wanted to interview him. He got a meal, and they provided him with a hospital gown so he could change out of his clothes before he was taken off to a state prison. There are cheers as Danilo Cavalcante is placed in a federal armored vehicle, heading to a state prison. Those cheers not for the convicted killer, but for the law enforcement that spent 13 days tracking the escapee.
Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred.
Police moved in, tightening the search area late last night. Evidence was found, and as police were checking it out, a burglar alarm was tripped in a house nearby. That pushed more officers into the zone.
Close to 1 a.m., picked up a heat signal that they began to track.
But then the storms came in, grounding air units and putting the efforts on pause. Once they moved on, additional SWAT units came in.
And shortly after 8 a.m., tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise.
Still armed. Once Cavalcante realized police were there, they say he tried to crawl away, holding on to that gun.
They released the dog. Some of our PSP CERT members were also there, had him surrounded. The dog subdued him, and team members from both of those teams immediately moved in. He continued to resist, but was forcibly taken into custody.
This is a message from the Pennsylvania State Police.
With Cavalcante in custody, residents who'd been living on the edge for 2 weeks learned he was back in handcuffs.
The search for Danilo Cavalcante is over.
Tonight, the convicted murderer is not only being held on that life sentence, but the Pennsylvania Attorney General has filed escape charges against him. Cavalcante has a preliminary hearing scheduled for later this month. We can predict here that that will probably be a video hearing, even if it happens as scheduled. One thing we do not know, we know that investigators tried to interview him through an interpreter. We do not know if they were able to get the answers to their questions, including what did he do for those 2 weeks? And did anybody help him? But earlier today, the governor and state police vowed to find out anyone who was aiding him and charge them criminally. In Avondale, Deanna Durante, NBC 10 News.
Deanna, thanks. This all started on August 31st when Cavalcante escaped from the Chester County prison by crab walking up a wall and making his getaway. The first sighting of Cavalcante came a few days later. Then he was seen at Longwood Gardens. A few days after that, he stole a van and was spotted by a former co-worker's house. He eventually stole a rifle, and that led up to today's capture.
As Cavalcante made his way across Chester County, communities were on edge naturally. NBC 10's Tim Furlong spoke with neighbors about the capture and a returning sense of normalcy in the area.
From the time he escaped to this moment, almost 2 full weeks later,
Proud to announce the subject is in custody.
Folks around the various and evolving search areas couldn't go to Longwood Gardens and wouldn't go to other wooded places like Anson Nixon Park in Kennett.
We completely had to avoid that, obviously, and stay clear of places like this, especially when he was seen up in this area.
Certainly there was an abundance of state troopers and police cars, and every other car that you drove past was a state trooper, so that was different.
The owner of Sky Cleaners along Route 1 is relieved to know Cavalcante is locked back up and that his customers are safe and will hopefully now be spending money again at his and other local businesses, including this one in downtown Kennett Square.
Anytime it was felt like close quarters in Longwood, we would lock the door, put a sign on, doors locked, please knock, and then we would let people in kind of one by one. We're excited to get back to the normal traffic we usually have and all that good stuff.
And the fear wasn't contained to folks in any one search perimeter. Everybody in the area was concerned. Families out west of Kennett Square, where I live in northern Delaware, folks east into Delaware County. Everyone was worried because they just didn't know where this guy was going to go next. Well, we know he is now going back to a prison cell. Hopefully it's far more secure than the facility he escaped 2 weeks ago.
So yeah, we're just really happy that he's been caught, and I hope justice is served.
In Kennett Square, Tim Furlong, NBC 10 News.
And a big question many had throughout this manhunt: did Danilo Cavalcante have help evading authorities?
And today, law enforcement revealed a little more about his efforts to get help. According to state police, Cavalcante's sister was someone who intended to help him. Earlier this week, they told us she was uncooperative with the investigation. We also know Cavalcante tried to contact at least 2 former co-workers. He was even caught on one of their Ring cameras while still on the run. Both reported him to police, but it remains unclear who else, if anyone, tried to help him.
There were people who were intent and intended to assist him. We had been successful, to the best of my knowledge, we had been successful in preventing that assistance from reaching him.
State police say they didn't find any means of communication on Cavalcante when he was captured.
A group photo of Cavalcante's capture has been posted by a former U.S. House member and shared significantly on social media. You can see how members of law enforcement surrounded the prisoner, then posed for the picture. During a news conference earlier today, the lieutenant colonel of the Pennsylvania State Police addressed this photo.
Those men and women worked amazingly hard through some very trying circumstances. They're proud of their work. I'm not bothered at all by the fact that they took a photograph with him in custody. Again, they're proud of their work. They kept the community safe. I say thanks to them and good job.
It wasn't immediately clear what law enforcement agency or agencies were involved in the impromptu photo. Policies for taking photos with captured suspects vary. Count on NBC 10 for complete coverage of the capture of Danilo Cavalcante and the aftermath of the manhunt. Hear from witnesses and officials who led this search. That's on NBC10.com and on the free NBC 10 app.